Let's go.
Welcome to the Soul Fam podcast, where we expand your personal universe. I'm Diana Marquetta, and in each episode, Soul Fam co-founder, co-creator Lexi Strummer-Solden and I interview the world's most rising and longtime experts in consciousness, spirituality, entertainment, healing, and science. From Earth's dimensions and dimensions way, way beyond. On the Soul Fam podcast, our frequencies are high and your heart chakras will open as these powerful voices of today share cutting-edge research, profound experiences, and valuable knowledge for your world in this out-of-this-world, thought-provoking, envelope-pushing interviews that could only take place right here on the Soul Fam podcast. Welcome to the Soul Fam podcast. I'm Diana Marquetta, and in this corner, we expand your personal universe. John Barnhardt, director, writer, and producer of An Open Door, which is a movie about Professor Temple Grandin of Colorado State University, who has discovered lots of ways to work with animal welfare and is autistic and is a real gift to those who are neurodivergent. John's film has been running the film festival circuit and is being shown around the country right now. It's a beautiful film. And so we invited John to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. So how did you get involved in this particular project?
So I graduated from Colorado State University, and then I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, where I got into the film industry, television industry. And one of the projects I ended up working on was something called Surfers Healing with Izzy Paskowitz, who comes from a line of big wave surfers. His dad was a big wave surfer. There's a movie on Netflix about his father.
Oh.
Izzy has a son with autism, and Izzy knew he was going to be taken out of like the pro circuit with surfing. So he starts this thing called Surfers Healing, where they take autistic or people with neurodiversity out into the water because the water calms people down. And so through that, John Festervan, he's the executive producer, and he and Temple Grandin worked together, and John was on a fundraising trip and found me that I lived in South Carolina. We started talking, and I was like, well, I'm trying to get back to Fort Collins. And he's like, well, I have this project maybe we could work on, Temple Grandin. I'm like, I've heard of her.
Right.
And then she's like, heavy advocate for autism. So I went to my friend Izzy, and I was like, hey, have you ever heard of Temple Grandin? He's like, just wait right here. And he runs over, brings a surfboard back with a Temple Grandin drawing. And I'm like, well, they're talking about me doing a documentary on her. He's like, if you don't do the documentary, we're no longer friends. I'm like, all right, I'll do the documentary. So John, I trusted John because I was a freelancer. And he said, is this project going to happen? Should I quit all my freelance? And he said, yes, quit all your freelance. And so and then I wanted to get back into teaching. I taught at a film school, Trident Technical College in Charleston, South Carolina, with Russ Schaff and Glenn Seal and all those people who basically get people into the film industry in Charleston and in Atlanta. Some of the students we had worked on The Walking Dead. Some work on Dynasty, some work on Ozark. And so, I knew I wanted to teach when I came back here, and John Festervan proposed that we would do a work study program. We get 9 work study students. I would take them through the gamut of like knowing zero about making movies and then doing that. And then I'm coming out of I did a wildlife TV show for ABC. It's called Born to Explore with Richard Weiss. So I kind of had an idea how to do the long format stuff. And then as I was teaching kids to make it, and I was like, we got to go 100% in. This person is super important. She's just finished her 17th book. She just turned 75. And we recognize that no one has told Temple's story since the movie that she did with Claire Danes was awesome, but it ends when she goes and gets her doctorate degree. And in that time, she's written, over 10 books and written over 500 articles for different magazines. And we needed to make sure that people could be reintroduced to Temple. And then full circle, when we had the showing here in Fort Collins, Izzy flew out with his surfboard and got Temple to sign a surfboard. So it was like full circle kind of thing with living in the world, like helping people with neurodiversity. And as much as I say I helped them, I'm just opening a window so people could view like these two organizations that are helping, like Temple and Izzy, have a huge impact on autism. And I mean, I've been with Temple for 3 years now, 2 years going on 3. And she's taught me so much about myself and taught me so much of how to look at the world differently.
Doors have always been very symbolic for me. A lot of people don't see doors to opportunity. I want to open doors for other people now. I figured that is what I should be doing.
She shows us that not only is there a silver lining to being different, it's the source of genius.
Sometimes it does come at the cost of not having more of a quote-unquote social or private life, but Temple's commitment to her work and to people, to teaching people and to helping animals, she has the fullest life of anybody I know.
Like, I'll listen to country western music in my car, and 60% of the songs are about relationships. I'd rather listen to the trucking songs. I kind of relate to those better.
1, 2, 3, 4.
When I first started out, there were no women out working with the animals. Now there's lots of them.
If my foot can push the pedal just as hard as any man's can.
There's no question in my mind that she's a pioneer. And started out, it's this gawky kid. It's been really fun to see her young, fun side come out again.
Here in the West, in the middle of the West Bonanza. Oh, man. See, that's pure visual thinking. There's kind of a hill still there. That's where we'd go sledding. Well, if a person totally thought in words, they might have a hard time imagining a dog was conscious, but always seemed to me a dog was conscious. I've got to always be on my best behavior, because a lot of kids look up to me, and I want to inspire them.
While it's cold and it's true.
And I realize how lucky I am to work with Temple Grandin. I'm really lucky.
We go through this place.
When I was younger, I used to look for like great, mysterious meanings of life. When I've gotten older, I've thought the most important things are the things that I do help do something real to make something better.
Temple just is one of those people who feels that her existence on earth depends upon her making contributions to others. And I truly believe that God gave her a gift that she feels she must share.
Funny how all we need is found on the
And, she's on to something with her new book, Visual Thinking, for sure, about how to get different people to work, different kinds of minds to work together for one common goal.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the themes of the film that I really appreciated, and of the book, obviously, that we need all different kinds of minds.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it was kind of crazy as I grew up with an engineer stepfather who couldn't understand why I didn't understand math. So my whole life until I met Temple, I kind of thought I was kind of stupid. And she reminded me that I don't know, she just made me feel like I'm okay, and what I'm doing is my path, and people think differently. And I think a lot of people, when they first see the movie, don't recognize that they might think differently, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to think differently. If you don't understand math, you're okay. because some people don't understand movies. And in my mind,
This is
those
true.
people aren't okay if they don't. I'm just kidding.
Yes, left, right. I don't know. Hemisync, we'll see.
Yeah.
But that's super interesting. I appreciate that you're sharing how this reflects on you as well. And I personally saw that in the movie also, where she really talks about things she's good at and it kind of, check, 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 and things she's bad at. So, and it's interesting to hear it from her because she's such a powerful person and she's done so much. I'm sure you must have felt that way.
Yeah, I mean, you feel it when you meet her. She has like a presence, right? So when I first saw her, I was like, she's important. You can tell, not just by people telling me she's Temple Grandin. She, without doing it on purpose, she commands a lot of respect, and she deserves a lot of respect for what she's done. I mean, she's one of the most humble people you'll meet. She'll give you her phone number if you want to talk to her, but she's also direct. She doesn't want, and she said this, she doesn't want autism to define her, and she doesn't want autism to define people who have autism.
Mm-hmm.
She wants them to find their skills, and I think that she's more relevant now than she has been in a while, and I think she's always been relevant, but now she's talking about things that ease people's minds that they're going to be okay. In a world that's tumultuous right now or whatever, it's kind of crazy and people can't even agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I think she makes it okay to be different, and as long as you're focused. Now she doesn't want you to sit around, and she wants you to work. She wants you to do the work. And I think what she liked about the way we approached the movie is that we were teaching students hands-on learning through filmmaking. They were building the cameras. They were the ones setting it up. They were the ones lighting it under my guidance, but they were doing it. And there isn't enough of that. People, like she says, she had a student in her class in college that didn't even know how to use a ruler. And so there's things that people need to, a book is always better when you're reading the book, not when you're reading your Kindle or whatever. She wants people to start connecting with things to make the world a better place. And I think one of those things is to recognize that people don't think the same way you do. And that's okay. And it's okay to have different opinions and approach things differently. It's not a one-track thing where maybe even in my time in the 70s or 80s, it was if you're not good at math, you're in the remedial classes and you're never going to make it. You might as well go and work the assembly line, which there's nothing wrong with it, but that's how they kind of told me that I would end up, and I think that Temple is, when I met Temple, I was 48 or 49 years old, and it was up until then that I thought I was dumb.
Wow.
So
that's remarkable. And vulnerable.
And she made sure I didn't feel like that anymore. I mean,
what?
And I don't mean by what she said. She would check in on me and say, "What are you doing? Well, how's it going?" And then I would ask her, "Well, what do you do when you're, I'm speaking in front of people now about the movie?" And she was like, "Here's what you do," and gave me some great advice. And it's, it's like she believes in me, believes that I'm going to tell the best story I can and represent her at the highest level. And I believe in her to, I don't know, more than to be a mentor and a friend to me than what I think other people see Temple as. I see her as this, I think, one of the most dynamic scientists I've ever met. And I've met with my wildlife show, I've met a lot of amazing people that have dedicated their lives to science, but I've never met anyone that like Temple who uses science to dedicate her life to people. So if that makes any kind of sense, man. She's not doing anything. She's giving it all away. I mean, she uses her book money to put grad students through school. I mean, that's an amazing human being. And, our goal is to reintroduce Temple to the world in case people forgot that there's people out there that are 78 years old and still writing books and still traveling and still talking to people and still inspiring kids that are 10, 12, 13, or 14. That's what we want people to get out of the movie.
I think you definitely accomplished that. I mean, I hope everybody sees it. Hopefully maybe we'll be able to put a little clip in this, but it's very interesting also how she relates to animals. And I've studied Temple a while ago related to animal welfare, mostly because I'm a farm girl and I'm a horse girl. So it helped me to understand my own animals so I could relate to them better and treat them in a different way. I could understand them better, which enhanced my life, and I could enhance theirs. It's just interesting. She has been around a while. So,
Yeah, and I'm no animal expert by any
yeah.
means, but what I do know, and maybe what my only job is to observe and report, right? And so when I did the wildlife show, I once asked Richard Weiss, the host, who's the new
Mhm.
president of the Explorers Club again in New York, I said, should I go back and get my biology degree? And he said, you'll be with the people who grow up with these animals. You'll know more about the animals than you can imagine. So they do certain things, like all bear do the same thing before they are thinking about attacking you,
Hmm.
And so I think Temple observes and reports. She's also a sensory person, right?
Mhm.
And animals they're not word-based things. They're sensory-based things, beings. And so Temple, being that herself, she was able to see or maybe understand what that animal's feeling on a different level. She's highly intelligent. I mean, I think her IQ is way up there and probably more up there than people know, And she'll tell you that, if someone asked her, like, do you wish you weren't autistic? She would say, no, it's what I am, and this is what I've used it in a certain way. And, like the movie said, I mean, she wasn't institutionalized, and which is
Mhm.
a crazy thing for how old, she was, or how young she was when autism. She didn't speak until she was
Mhm.
7. She gives a lot of hope to people. A kid out there that's 5 or 6 and not speaking, and the parents are like, oh, man, this is
Right.
tough, and they
Right.
recognize, they see Temple. That's her power, man. And the fact that she's not just doing stuff for animal science, but she's doing stuff for, horse therapy. She's doing stuff for, the humane access to cattle, and also
Mhm.
neurodiversity, not just autism, but other things.
Right. Other
Yeah.
aspects of
Yeah.
neurodiversity, which we should mention, is ADHD, ADD, autism. It's all sorts of different sort of
Yeah.
categories, so to speak. And I thought it was interesting also, I'm sure you related to this though, that obviously Temple has a very high IQ, which autistic people haven't always been credited. And I don't know if a sense of neurodiversity is ever sort of, if you felt that at all personally, or ADHD or something like that, but I think it's interesting. I often find those people, the most intelligent people, they just look at things differently, and it's not, what's in the box. It's they don't necessarily fit in the box. However, what they have to say or do is often profound and can push the envelope of how we exist.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and I'm going by what Temple says, is that, some of our greatest minds were probably on
Mhm.
the
On the
spectrum.
spectrum.
I mean, Isaac Newton probably, and
Mhm.
I don't know, but I mean, Michelangelo, you don't look at a slab of marble and come up with David without being a visual thinker. And that, I'm not saying he was autistic. I'm saying that he thought differently than the other stone cutters that were making walls for the Colosseum. He looked at a brick and he saw something different. And, I'm a completely visual thinker. And before I met Temple, I didn't understand. Like, I had a friend who we started doing film and television production together.
Mhm.
And I would tell him how I see it working out, and he didn't see it. And I was like, man, you got to watch more movies. You got to do this, that, or the other. And I wasn't really being fair to him, and I didn't know it until I met Temple, that, me and him think different. He's more of in Temple's kind of words, he'd be more of a pattern thinker, but I am
Mm.
a completely visual person. I see it differently. I see the
Mhm.
world differently, and I'm relying on that a lot. I was a lacrosse goalie when I was a
Mhm.
younger person. I feel like that was a completely visual thinking way of learning how to be a lacrosse goalie. I wasn't reading about it. I had to watch people do it. I was a skateboarder too. If I just watched them and I applied it, then I could do it, and I could see, skateboarders are probably a lot of visual thinkers because or skiers or snowboarders or
Right.
something that has to see some kind of route and can turn up, to what people think is just a parking lot to put your car. A skateboarder could use it as a playground for 8 hours. And I think as a filmmaker and working with Temple, that I've just applied what I learned in the lacrosse school and on my skateboard to find a different way to look at a parking lot or a different way to look at someone like Temple, you know? And I think Temple really appreciated that. She did not want to watch the film before it was shown to 600 people. She wanted to be there and witness it like her because she trusted John Festervan and I. And John Festervan is the backbone of all of this. He was the genesis of it. He was the one that gave me a chance, and he's changed my life. He also, me and him work well together because we ride in the fifth gear all the time, but he is one of the greatest human beings you ever met, and he took a risk on me, you know? And it was my job to make sure that that wasn't a risk, that that was the right choice, and that getting these students, they become like the pulse of the movie, you know, because they, you know, when you're making a movie like this, you're riding on the shoulder of giants like Temple or some of these other people in Fort Collins. You know, there's some real big agricultural people that come out of here. John Matsushima, who's 104 years old, he's here. You know, there's a lot of people here that respect Temple, and then I think, you know, being a representation of Colorado State University, a place I love, and making sure that they know that the college trusts me to tell the very best story about an icon like Temple.
Yeah.
Is it means a lot to me. It means a lot that you know, I'm grateful every day that I get to sit there and watch this movie, work on this movie, or do other movies for Colorado State. That university, and us kind of the same way, took a risk with, you know, on me, and there was no way I was going to let that movie be any less than what it was. You know, I gave every possible thing I could, and by that, one of the students said, we go 100% because you go 100%. So they gave everything they could. Festervan did, and Temple trusted us to tell her story. And it was just a really cool experience. And I think those students will remember it for the rest of their lives, and they'll make a bigger difference than I ever will or could have.
Yeah, that's very true. It's great. And I would assume in this situation, having done a few documentaries myself, that it's a sink or swim situation. And I'm sure you were patient with the students, but still, when you're on deadlines, there's money involved, people have schedules. I mean, you really have to step up to the plate.
Yeah, I mean, I edited she travels so much. So like for in the movie, the main interview, which seems like it's the one with the red and black shirt, seems like it's the main interview. That was our last interview. And we did that 20 days before it was showing. So I edited, I was editing all the way up. I probably did 100 days at 12 hours a day editing, but the students would come in and sit. I mean, there's 2 students that were there with me the majority of that time. I mean, they were in. I mean, they didn't, it's a different, you know, I don't know how anything works, but there was no way that was accidental that they walked in there, because they bled just as much as I bled. And I think we did it together because we did it together. You know, I never felt like I was doing it alone, and either did they. And we all had a common goal that this was for something bigger than us, you know? I mean, to me, it's like, maybe at first it's a little bit about like, oh, look at me, I'm going to direct this Temple, I'm going to do this big movie, I got a budget. But the second you get into pre-production, or let's just even go down like the first frame you shoot, then that's not about you anymore. It's about who you're making the movie with, or who you're doing the project with, or who you're doing the project about, you know? And if you ask I think anybody that's worked in movies, you know, they might talk about, oh yeah, that's a cool shot. I like it when Harrison Ford went under the truck with the whip or whatever. But they're like, remember when Carl was like, we're holding onto his belt when he shot, you know, or something. They'll remember the human connection more than they'll remember the actual thing, and they'll want to be back on that set again. They'll want to be doing that again and again and again. And then when you realize that the power of cinema can change people's lives, then you become addicted to that yourself, and you just want to keep trying to do better projects every time. I think you talk to any filmmaker, they just want people to leave their movie and talk about it on the drive home. And they want to tell people, movies changed my life. I mean, they changed what I wanted to do, you know? And I mean, I probably never will meet the directors that changed my life, you know? But they have to know that their movies change lives, you know? I mean,
absolutely.
So.
Yeah, the creative process is addictive.
100%, you know, and it's even that when you're down in the trenches with it, that pulling yourself out of it is like what matters most. It's like that Bukowski quote, what matters most is how well you walk through the fire. I think if you're creative, you live by that. And, you know, John and I worked really well together because he's kind of a mixed bag of visual and a pattern thinker. So I'd tell him, hey, we're going to do this, that, or the other. And he'd be like, well, all right, what do you need? And I would tell him. And the way John put it is like, imagine I'm the AD or assistant, I'm the athletic director. You tell me what you need, and then I make sure you have it so you could be the best coach and the best player. And that was sort of John's role. But John, I mean, he is relentless in getting this thing to getting eyes on it. I mean, this movie is dead in the water without John Festerban. You know, that guy, he's all in, man, and he has more going on than I do, you know? I mean, so I think that, like Temple said, you got to recognize what people are good at, and you got to just get out of their way and let them do their thing.
Exactly. So is the film showing in specific places now? Are you guys still on the film festival circuit? Are you doing special showings? What's happening?
So anything with education. So if like we're going to Stanford University to show it up there, and we show it at Auburn, where Temple could speak to students, and then we could show the movie, and then we can have like a Q&A. We just showed it down there's a place down here called the Spur Institute. It's the stock show this month in Denver. And so we showed the movie last night, and then Temple couldn't be there. So I brought a bunch of students to talk about the process of making the movie. But we are in talks right now with Good Deeds Entertainment to get distributed.
Awesome.
And we have sort of like a date where we're trying to get it on, something to get more eyes on it. But our main thing right now is to reintroduce. Temple goes on all these things. She's at the FFA with Future Farmers of America, and I think that's right. And then that was in Indianapolis, and there was like 70,000 people there, and they were all in the Indianapolis stadium where the Colts play. And Temple's like speaking to all these people, and then she mentions the movie, and it was cool, and then like 1,000 people showed up or something like that, showed up to the movie, and all these cool kids, and that they were in, people were in awe, like, oh, she waved to me. So when I saw Temple in her element, and I had been on stage with her, man, 24 times, but she's my friend, right? So I'm like, oh, cool. But like, when I saw her in that element I was like, man, I am like sitting next to like Paul McCartney she's a beauty. She's Jim Morrison, man. She's like the thing, and so I realized, I've always known it's grateful to sit by her, but I realized the impact that she has on people that don't know what's going on, maybe with a little bit. Like this one girl came up to me crying, and she said, I didn't know animals saved other people's lives. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have horses, and it makes me feel better if knowing that Temple went through the same thing.
Right.
And she hugged Temple, and, and it was just like this kid who's battling with some things, and the movie made her feel okay for a little bit. And then for me, that's all it needs to do. It doesn't need to change 1,000 lives. It needs to change like one life. And it's changed my life, excluding the crew and John, but I need someone to see it and be like, I'm going to be a little nicer to that person in my class or I'm going to try to be nicer to myself, or you know what? I'm going to be a photographer. I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to do what people tell me I can't. That's the purpose of the movie. I think it has multiple purposes, but I want people to call me one day and be like, your movie changed my life. I do. I want that. Because that's why you're supposed to make these,
Exactly. It's very impactful, and certainly just from somebody who's already familiar with Temple Grandin's work, it was impactful to me. I learned things I hadn't learned before about her. I especially enjoyed the interviews that you did with her in her old house, and when she really talks about her childhood. And I think there's so many parents and children that can relate to that right now. And hopefully we're sort of moving into a new kind of age where we really accept autism and neurodiversity and whatever this may be, and really help each other cope with it and make the most. I don't know that coping's the right word, but to really expand upon it. So everybody's minds, everybody's way of thinking or doing can be supported.
Yeah, or used too. I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know the perspective. I mean, who thought that Temple would be able to see in a different way to help animals? But she did, and she could hear it, and she could tell, hey, these lights. But she's just applying and this is all my take on it. So this isn't.
That's what we're asking for.
Well, I think Temple, because of her mom making her do stuff, right? That Temple recognized early on that she saw it different. But she also recognized she thought everyone thought like her, too, until her like mid-30s, But I think she started to observe and report and pay attention as a scientist early. She wanted to be a scientist like when she was 18, maybe even earlier. The fact that she could recognize things differently by the way she viewed them kind of led her to who she is. That she was able to recognize maybe her gift a little bit, So like if there's some kid who's like this amazing artist and recognizes that they're amazing artists, maybe even without their parents going, oh, look at how amazing you are. Maybe they could recognize it themselves. And that's how they move mountains. And maybe that's like where we're heading is people are like, yeah, I'm dyslexic, but I also came up with this.
Right.
And you're like, well, that's amazing. They're not afraid to. No one's hiding it anymore. I think that's where you need to get. No one's like, I can't do math. I'm not going to tell anybody, right? No, I'm just going to tell you I can't do math, but I could do this. So I'm going to focus on that. And since I hyper focus on that, maybe it changes things. Instead of you always trying to like make me do math. Well, I can tell you right now that's never going to happen. But I sure like photographing stuff, and maybe that'll change something.
And telling stories well told.
But you gotta. It's like Betsy says in the movie, man. If your kid is writing stories or playing Legos, they're telling you what they're interested in. And I think when I was a kid, it was like, don't do that. You need to be, my stepdad would be like, you need to do something with accounting. I don't want to be an accountant. I want to be a filmmaker. Like torture. And he would say, oh, you'll never make any money being a filmmaker. And and my dad would say, I remember this. This is how I had seen Star Wars in the theater. I had seen all that. And then in 1981, I went into Road Warrior with my dad, George Miller flick, right? 93 minutes in the Lewis and Clark Theater in Seattle. My dad always had a camera around his waist, around slinged around him. And we're walking out of there, and he's like, "You all right?" And I was like, "I think I want to make movies when I get older." And my dad said, "Good." And then all he did was fuel that. He made me watch Apocalypse Now. He didn't care. Excalibur. He'd make me watch. Alien. All these movies that were in some way, shape, or form building this aesthetic that I didn't know I was going to use later, but I wanted to. So my dad recognized it. My stepdad didn't. And I think that's the issue, is that, and I'm not a parent. Okay? Right. So, but my stepdad desperately wanted me to be an engineer. And I can't do the math. There's no way I was going to do that. My dad wanted me to be a movie maker because he recognized it. And so math don't do that. Let me show you this camera. Let me show you what to look for. That was my dad. My stepdad's like, how are you failing algebra 3 times? Well, I suck at it, and so that's
just
why.
Not simple.
Can you tell it's my 3rd time. I'm not good at it, and then, there's always that line that I live by. Find something you're not good at, and then don't do it again. That's helped me out through my years. It's like, hey, I'm not good at that. I'm not going to do it again.
But somebody else is, so we'll let them do it.
Yeah, and I'm only kind of talking from what I learned from Temple about myself. So I don't know if any of this is even, but it works for me. Relevant. So I guess it is true for me.
Right. Exactly.
And maybe that's what people need to recognize, is that I think you do have to observe and report, not just with your friends, or like recognize it. Like, if I talk to someone like that, that really upsets them. I need to change the way I approach that. So I listen to a lot of I just listen to the coaches from UConn, Gino's master class, and my friend McKenna Hofschild is a grad assistant there right now. So I'm really, and I listen to Gino, and I try to apply those things I learn. Listen to being a better teacher for the students or a leader, and it's work, And but you do have to observe and report to recognize, like, man, I wasn't that good today, but I got to be better tomorrow. And here's a few things I need to work on. And I think by observing that with people, you could benefit yourself and also recognize their skill set. They're not good at this, but they're really good at that. So they don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to, let's just let them do that. I don't know, but I feel like it's working. I feel like that's what Temple does.
And you did in the movie. What was your favorite part of this particular film? If you're in the audience and you walked out on the sidewalk afterwards, what would you say was your favorite part?
I think objectively, two things. I think that the little cinematic grammar parts where we cut like back to the kid with the kite and all this kind of thing where there's some kind of cinematic thing instead of just like this following Temple around thing. I think brings it in for a landing. I also think that the circular stuff we did where all this Temple wanted to do is work for NASA. She wanted to make aerospace stuff, but she couldn't. So we open it up with birds flying, and it brings her to where she's going to end up. And that's one circle. And then at the end, those birds land. And then drawing with just the regular pencil and the horses to the mechanical pencil with her drawing. And then that she was a decent writer, and now she's going to write a letter to everybody. I think these little mini circles, and with that, where there was no chapters, like, oh, now we're going to deal with meat. Now we're going to deal with the arc worked well, and the circles worked well. That's how I would hope that's what it was. It's not seamless from my point of view, but I hope the audience thinks it's pretty seamless, and that it wasn't forced down their throats. That's how I think.
That I would agree with that. Just reflecting upon it, I would say it flows very well.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, that was the purpose, is like we were cautious where there was no loud banging, no loud noises. What we didn't want to do is like if there was people that bothered in the audience, that they weren't taken out of the movie because we had messed up with some kind of shocking sound or something.
That's an interesting thought, especially because a lot of people who are autistic or have various issues are probably watching this, and that can be a distraction. You're sort of like squirrel. So
or like something really loud bangs and it's over. So everything, the music had to be very. It was important for us that everyone that was in the theater was engaged, that nothing distracted them. So
definitely does that. So what of this experience, and the students must have been so excited to work on something like this as their first experience. I mean, they must have been floored.
I think for them, and I think that, for when I grew up, I never thought I would be able to make a movie because you'd have to go to film school or get your hands on 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter or something. That's so expensive and so kind of out of my realm as financially or whatever. So they have access to cameras since they were very young. So their perspective on telling a story is quick and dirty, 8 seconds here, whatever.
Oh.
But like to do a movie like this and to realize maybe they didn't know as much as they thought. And then at the end of the movie, knowing more than they thought is a cool thing to see. And to see, like last night we showed the movie. 2 of the students are up there talking about their experience. One kid comes in knowing nothing. He's a computer science major, gets his computer science degree, gets his grad degree in journalism, and now is making movie. He's been making the last 3 movies with me.
Oh,
wow. It's I think their perspective of believing in them, giving them confidence, and challenging them in ways that they didn't think they would be, like making them interview people, make them be on stage with Temple without me. Makes a difference, I think, to get them to snap out of it, because you did it once, you could do it twice, and we ran into some real things where we had to dig our heels in and stand our ground. And, one of the things we talked about in my class was do it now. So 10 years down the road, when you have a project you want to do and you need to dig your heels in, you've already done it once. And so, I taught at Trident, and I was young, and I quit to do the wildlife show. And then a lot of students will reach out to me and tell me where they're at. And the difference maybe me and Russ Schaff or Glenn had on them. And so I know that there's at least one student that's going to do the video thing and then going to make a huge difference, and they're going to remember the Temple Grandin project.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case, I think you can't be 100%, but I would say 9 out of the 10 students will pursue a career in visual storytelling
Mm-hmm.
because they see the power it has with doing it on Temple Grandin, and this will be one of the better projects. They'll base their whole, I came in this like here, knowing nothing. And then they came in here because of me. They got a huge jump, not because of me, because of the project.
Right.
They get a huge jump. So I came out of college like knowing how to edit VHS tapes. They're coming out of college with a documentary under their belts.
Exactly.
So whatever they accomplish is going to be far more than I accomplished because their starting point is way different than a lot of people's.
Yeah, it's a good point too.
They're taking off an award-winning movie when they walk out of the school. And that's a huge
That never happened.
shout out to Fester Van and CSU and the ag department for, I don't think anyone sees that what we did here will, the ripple effect it's going to have in 10 years. That people will look back and be, no, it was this project at Colorado State that allowed me to do this other project. And I think a lot of people at CSU, if they're still there, will be like, oh, we should have done more of that, And I think it's my goal and my students' goals, and not even my students, some of them are now just my coworkers, is to make sure that people exist at the highest level possible and not just accept being mediocre is okay. None of my students do that. They are all capable of winning Emmys down the road because they don't go 50% into a project. They go all in. And that's something Fester Van and I taught them, and I think they learned that from Temple too. You don't write 17 books by striving to be mediocre.
Right. She talks about that too. She hits on that note about what life is really about is doing, at least for her at this point, and not just doing, sort of half-assed, but I mean, really doing something. That was my sense towards the end of the film. That was a message she wants to leave everybody.
Yeah, she wants people to know that, one, don't let autism define you. That's one of her things. 2 is if you're having problems trying to figure out who you are, like, man, I don't know what I want to be. Like, I don't know. And I mean by do I want to be a filmmaker or do I want to be an engineer? I don't know. Right? I don't know. But when you find something you're interested in and you go all in, it can define you and give you a lot of purpose. I think some people are just looking for purpose. What am I doing here? Am I existing or am I living? For me, I need purpose, man. I need to have it. I need my stuff to have impact. That's me. That's just me.
Right.
But I think the best thing they could do quickly is to find a purpose, and that purpose could change during their seasons in their lives. But like my purpose now is to teach these visual filmmakers. My other person down the road, my purpose might be doing something on climate change. I don't know, but if whatever you think it is, you got to go all in on it, or it won't you just won't feel like accomplished. I think you got to go all in. You can't be mediocre, man. It just doesn't. You'll just be it'll just be mediocre forever. You got to go all in, and Temple goes all in. I'm gonna write a book. I'm going all in on that book. And look at Temple's day. She goes 100% writing the book in the morning, and then she'll stop, and then she'll go 100% on her lecture.
Right.
Then she'll stop, and she'll be 100% teaching. That's what I think I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like just focus on the book. That's that when you're doing something, like a D1 athlete is a great example. They're 100% academics when they're doing it. And they could set that aside, and when they get on the court or in the volleyball, court, they're 100% there. And they can get off and they're 100% to their family or friends. That's what I mean. There's everything that means something to you. You have to go 100% in to make it more than you could possibly imagine.
Right. Because if you
that's
don't,
what Temple does. Temple does the cattle industry and
Mm-hmm.
she goes 100%, and then she goes into autism. But if she was working for Southwest Airlines, she would be solving that problem. Or if she was working for NASA, she'd be solving another problem, and she would go 100% into it. And that's what people need to do more.
I'm going to just mention this as an aside, which is a theory I have about neurodivergence and ADHD and ADD and autism, is that because there's actually an ability to hyperfocus, that also helps enable you to give that 1,000% really. And it's maybe not viewed as normal, but it's actually an advantage. Just a thought.
Can you repeat that again? It just kind of broke up a
Oh,
little
it did.
bit.
I'm sorry. So I was saying that I have a theory about neurodivergence and ADHD and ADD and autism, that the brain is able to hyper-focus on things. And so you can move into fifth gear in a heartbeat and hyper-focus on that and achieve. However, that's not always accepted as like a norm. It's perhaps even in some cases frowned upon because of the frenetic attention someone might give something. Does that make sense?
Totally. I mean, like even me, I get people like go, why I don't understand how you could work so much, right? To me, I work 7 days a week. I work no less than 5 hours in those seven. I work
Mm-hmm.
way longer than that. But if I go in on the weekends, I'm putting a minimum of 5 hours in.
Right.
People are like, I don't understand how you could work like that. You're just so focused on making these movies. And I see it different.
Mm-hmm.
I see it, and I think maybe when people do that, there's like super benefits to it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also some things you got to recognize. It's like, am I also applying that to other aspects of my life? Am I
Mhm.
staying healthy? Am I getting enough sleep, or am I just hell bent on, making, Road Warrior 7 or something? Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
I think that there's got to be balance, and sometimes I feel like maybe I don't have enough balance sometimes,
Mhm.
that my whole balance is work and film and teaching,
Right.
that I
It's a
have to
lot.
step back and say I need some balance for myself.
Yeah.
Temple works a lot. Temple also hangs out with friends, but also you got to recognize that Temple's balance is what she's doing. I think people forget that.
That's a
That
good way of
balance
looking at it.
balance isn't just sitting on your, like, oh, okay, I work 10 hours. I should go out and sit and stare at the tree in my backyard. I don't want to stare at my tree. I'd rather watch like Blade Runner and
Right.
listen to how they did it or something like that, and because that's where I'm at now.
Right.
I don't want to sit around. And I think a lot of people feel like that. And I don't think people should feel bad if they just want to work all the time, because maybe they're not, like, there's a difference between a job and work.
And something they
People
love, something they
people
obviously feel passionate
yeah.
about.
And people that are like, I don't want to think about it. That's a job. And if it's your work, meaning like my life's work, Temple's life's work is solving problems, then you become, like you said, addicted to the creativity. She's addicted to solving problems and inspiring people. There is nothing wrong with that. But some people can't see it because, it's breakfast. I got to have my breakfast, and then I go to work and have my coffee, and then I go to work, and then I hate my work. So I drive to my brother's house and we drink Olympia beer and, complain about our jobs. That's not what we're doing here.
Right.
Temple would never complain about her jobs. She does, because it's not a job to her.
Right.
It's her life's work. And I think that's what people should try to find, is what is your life's work. Now, if you have to go and work a job, you have to keep your family going. I respect that at the highest level possible. My granddad and my dad and my uncle and my cousin now work for Boeing. They have families and they support them and they love working there. But, my cousin's in a band, and he's producing music. And,
Yep.
my dad was a photographer on the side, and my uncle did like fix cars. And there's things you got to do instead of just like working, sitting on the couch and watching Law and Order. It's not, I think you got to, and I think Temple would agree with me. I think you have to do something to contribute back to society to make it just a little bit better place when you check out.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Temple's doing.
Yeah, for sure. That's very, very clear. Very clear. What were your biggest challenges in working on this film? And also in the fact that this documentary, sometimes documentaries can be a little staid and a little, it's hard to keep, it's not hard. Sometimes they're done in a way that is not super exciting, which I cannot say about this. I was engaged in it, fully throughout the entire film. So how did you master that? Was that a lot of pre-planning? Was that a lot of like shooting from the hip and just feeling it as you went? Or how did that work for you?
So John told me like a month out that we'll probably be shooting the movie, that I should get ready, And I think what he meant by ready was like close out your freelance, get to Colorado. Well, I was already did that. The way I got ready is I listen. I didn't read all of Temple's book. I didn't have time, so I just like every time I was traveling, I had her in my ear talking, and then I did read Visual Thinking because that was the book we were going to do. I had to try to jam all her books in as fast as I could. And then I thought, I'm a huge fan of Chef's Table. Here's how it works, right? And I knew that it was going to be singular, that we were going to have a story about Temple, and she was going to be the main actor, and we were going to have all these kind of side actors. But I didn't want it just to be a bunch of talking heads, so we were going to have to find things that brought it in for a landing on like kind of the cinematic grammar stuff, right? And so we kind of figured out how we were going to start it and how we were going to end it first. So we knew we were going to get from here to here. And I think the book came out right when we started the movie by Rick Rubin called The Creative Act. And it became became our Bible. Every student had to listen or read it. And it helped us get through the project, is look for things that might be new. So we didn't go into the documentary like at 100%. And I learned this through shooting wildlife. We go in about 65 or 70%, and then you let the project kind of take you where it needs to go. You can't go and like, okay, I want this polar bear to do this, that, or the other. You just got to go in like, we're going to talk to this person. Hopefully we'll see polar bear, and it'll be, and then hope And so with that, we did that with Temple. We didn't know some of the things that were going to happen, but we had to be able and have the freedom to let them happen.
Right. Be nimble about it.
We didn't know Betsy Lerner was going to be the second voice of the movie until we interviewed her. Like, this is like, she says everything we need. We also didn't know we were going to have to leave people out that we thought were going to be major players, And then once, some of the challenges, Temple's schedule is crazy. And so it's hard to get interviews with her, and the time, and some of the other things we were under a time constraint. We were showing this thing April 3rd, the day we started. And that we say we started in August, but we just shot her birthday in August. We didn't hit the road till October to get the meat of everything.
Wow.
We didn't really start editing until like November. And for a documentary like that, it's crazy, and tight. We wanted to be deliberate. We wanted, my buddy Josh McClain scored the music. He's a professional cello player. And then we got my friend Christine and my friend Danny to cut some original songs. And I knew that once I got all those elements, that I could probably cut myself a movie. A lot of our movie, the structure and theme is from the movie The Arrival, the Amy Adams movie with Jeremy Renner, with all the circles that come back, that you're showing stuff at the beginning that's deliberate to come back at the end. Her walking down the path and it's winter. That's her talking about when she was a kid, she couldn't talk. The drawings, the typewriter, all these things. And it comes back that when she says, I don't think my teenage self would believe it. You see her walking into the future and it's spring. You see her typing the letter to the future, because as much as Temple says she's a visual thinker, she's an amazing writer also.
Obviously.
So it's like we wanted it to kind of always come full circle. So that movie really inspired us to pay attention to those circles, because everything they did was super deliberate. If you watch that movie, they're telling you the ending and the beginning. You just have to go rewatch the movie. And I don't know if people would rewatch our movie, but I knew that the circles had to be kind of, when you saw them a second time, you got it. You see the typewriter with these young hands, and now you see her with the old hands. Okay, we're bringing it in for a landing here. So it's a lot of stuff too, is relying on instincts, meaning like relying on all the things I've prepped for, watching all the movies. I watch a movie a day,
Wow.
and it might be a movie I've watched 10 times,
Right.
100 times, or it might be something new. And relying on my instincts is shooting from being a news shooter to wildlife shooter to sports shooter, and knowing I'm just going to have to, and my students were going to have to do the same thing, and I was going to have to trust my students to do it. And that's how I think you have to approach documentaries. You got to kind of rely on your instincts as being a visual storyteller, and you got to know cinematography. If you don't know painters, you're not going to be I think your painting is going to suffer. If you don't read writers, and you might not like Chaucer or Milton or Hemingway, you got to read them to be a better writer. I'm reading Frankenstein right now, and
Cool.
I just can't believe that book is so profound, written by an 18-year-old. You got to read that to understand the genre she was writing in, and maybe understand the genre you're writing. You got to do the homework.
Right.
You got to trust yourself. And I think Temple does that too. She draws something, she's trusting her instincts. I think that's a big thing.
You're going to tell an audience who hasn't seen this film what their takeaway is going to be, or what you hope their takeaway is going to be. What would that be?
I would hope that the audience walks out of my movie and wants to be a better person and a kinder human being, a more kind human being, because the person you might be judging might be the next Temple Grandin. I want people to be better, including myself. I want people to walk out of the movie and say, you know what? I'm going to try harder to be better. That's what I want.
Well, that is a beautiful way to wrap this up. You've given me a lot of time. What's up next for you?
I am finishing up after the Temple movie, I did a movie called Undersized, which followed McKenna Hofschild, our point guard, 5'2" point guard, who's still one of the baddest basketball players in the land. We followed her senior year. So right now I'm doing a documentary on the CSU women's volleyball team and Coach Emily Cohan. And they won the Mountain West tournament. And I'm doing one on the women's basketball team on Coach Ryan Williams and his squad with the Ronzik sisters.
Cool.
Because I want people to recognize what it means to be Colorado State Ram and what it takes to persevere with heart and grit. So wrapped up the McKenna movie. I'm editing the volleyball movie, and I leave tomorrow to go shoot the basketball movie with the squad in Wyoming.
Oh, wow.
We just finished up a movie on the Hudson River called the Voice of the Hudson. I was just a camera crew, but my friends Joe Dady and Tim Keys and Greg Morrissey took 8 high school students from the mouth of the start of the Hudson at Mount Marcy all the way to the Jersey Shore and tested it for microplastics to see what the health of the Hudson was.
Wow.
And that project is about to go into the film festivals,
Wow.
Well, not in it. We're about to get denied by a ton of film festivals and hope we get into one, So
you will.
But, we're finishing. We have a lot of projects wrapping up. But, my focus is to, right now, learning from Temple, being a female scientist, I moved in after meeting McKenna Hofschild that I want to shine as much light on female athletes as possible and not let that light dim out. It was very bright with Caitlin Clark. I want it to stay brighter. I want people to recognize that the mid-major schools like Colorado State University, University of Wyoming, and schools like that in that Mountain West that are moving, but in that range, that there are athletes changing people's lives out there. And pay attention to your female athletes as much as you pay attention to your male athletes. And that's sort of my goal now. Like I said, that's moving on to that, that's what I'm doing, and promoting this movie the best we can to get it out there.
Right. Get distribution and for lots of people to see it. Get more eyes on it. Exactly. Yeah. Well, everything has a message. Everything you do has a powerful message, John.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you reaching out and letting me be on this and then rant and rave about who knows what. But it means a lot that you're creating a platform to put people out there for people to maybe just hear or maybe even get on your platform to speak about what they're just trying to do or recognize. And I think it means a lot, not just to me, but to John Festervan, to my crew for sure, and to Colorado State University.
Beautiful. I am fortunate to be able to get to interview you and to have seen the movie, honestly. It's certainly inspiring, and I really resonated with it too. I think a lot of people will in so many different ways.
Yeah, me too. I want people to see it and then have an effect from it.
Exactly. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, to talk with you, invite you to come speak, see the film, be a special showing, something like that, what's the best way?
You could, two ways. You can go to the website of the Temple Grandin documentary.
Mm-hmm.
It's just templegrandindocumentary.com, or an easier one would be barnflyproductions.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's my website. And then I could get it to its proper channels to get it to wherever. So Barn, like my last name, Fly Productions. You can email me through there. You can look at some other things. You can check it out. So.
Awesome. Well, I hope everybody sees it. I really do. I hope it has.
Thanks.
It already has had a lot of impact, so I hope it continues to.
Yeah, and thank you so much for what you're doing.
Word for our sponsors, Oweli Supplements and CBD Pure, both whom have generously offered to give you 15% off using the SoulFam podcast coupon code SoulFam, SOULFAM, and free shipping. And trust me, when you're ordering stuff like this, it actually really adds up. You can save quite a bit of money, several dollars for every order. Both Lexi and I have worked with these products and their companies, and we have firsthand experience, and we really like these companies, sincerely. Oweli, OWELI.com, is a supplement company that uses natural ingredients based on ancient knowledge coupled with modern science, which sounds a lot like the SoulFam podcast. I am a huge supplement person. I take multiple supplements each day. The quality of Oweli supplements is high and effective, in my opinion. I take Move for joint health because I work out almost every day. I do yoga, I walk, I hike, I ride horses. And secondly, I mix collagen, peptides, hydrolyzed protein for a protein shake every day so I can be sure to get the right amount of protein in my body every day. And for women, I personally feel that's super important. CBD Pure, www.cbdpure.com, is made with non-GMO hemp grown without herbicides, pesticides, and other dangerous chemicals. Both Lexi and I feel like this is a stellar product. I use the CBD Pure 500 cream for pain in my neck from texting and working at a computer and a car accident I was in. Lexi uses CBD Pure Pet Health to help some of her posse of rescued cats who show up at her doorstep. They often have joint issues and other movement issues, and this product really seems to help Lexi's cats. Both products work superbly. No harmful side effects, at least from our experience. So once again, we thank our sponsors, CBD Pure and Oweli Supplements. We'll post links to both product lines on our Instagrams, on my link tree, and on YouTube, and on our upcoming website, Patreon. Just remember the code for 15% off with free shipping, which once again adds up to a lot, is SoulFam, SOULFAM. That's SoulFam for our SoulFam.